I am a big believer in eliminating and not organizing useless meetings. Within an organization, there are just so many useless meetings. Yeah, and I don't care how talented the team is, how talented the company is. Even in the very best companies, there are just so many useless meetings. At the same time, I don't subscribe to the view that all meetings are useless or all meetings are evil. There are actually some very useful meetings. The reason I want to get rid of many meetings is so then I can do some useful meetings. One type of meeting that I have found super useful is what I used to call two-on-twos when I was at Stripe. At the time, I would be the PM leader for some meaningful product at Stripe or a business. The challenge I noticed as the product started growing in any setting, there were too many pairwise conversations happening. For instance, I would have my one-on-one with my Eng counterpart, who's the leader of the entire Eng team or org of whatever business that we are working on. Then I might have one-on-one conversations with the design counterpart of mine. Then I would have one-on-one conversations with each PM on my team or PM leader on my team. Then the Eng leader would have one-on-one conversations with each EM, and the design leader has one-on-one conversations with each designer. Same for data science. All these conversations are happening, and information is getting exchanged. Like, well, we have this problem with this release, or we're stuck on this issue, or this customer raised an escalation, or we have this operational issue, or we have to pause development on this important strategic feature because there's some infrastructure issue, blah, blah, blah. In a typical organization that doesn't have meeting discipline, what ends up happening is there are all these pairwise conversations happening, and there is a loss of fidelity in each conversation because each conversation is a little biased, which makes the person look good. It's like, well, the problem is with the other team. And then what happens in a typical organization is the PM leader fights with the Eng leader saying, well, my PM told me this. And the Eng leader is like, well, I don't know what that is, but let me get back to you. Then the Eng leader goes to the engineering manager, and the engineering manager gives him or her a different version. And then the Eng leader comes back and fights with the PM leader saying, oh, well, your PM doesn't quite know all the details. This is what my engineering manager told me. So now I'm fighting with the Eng leader. Well, but how do we resolve this? Let's problem solve this, blah, blah, blah. You get where this is going, right? It's just chaos. But this is the default, especially as you get into PM leadership, engineering leadership, senior leadership. This is no wonder that people at these levels are spending so much of their time in meetings and are constantly stressed and, frankly, not very effective. This is something I saw, frankly, throughout my career, but I did not have the ability, wisdom, or the leadership skills to do much about it until I was at Twitter, where actually my manager at the time, Kevin Weil, he and his engineering counterpart and his design counterpart, they started doing this weekly meeting, these 3-on-3s. So it would be the head of product at Twitter, the head of engineering at Twitter, and the head of design at Twitter, with me, who reports to the head of product, and the Eng leader, who reports to the head of engineering, and the design leader or the design manager, who reports to the head of design. So all three of us would get into a room with the three of them. So it would be 6 people. And the goal was to talk about basically whatever's on our mind. Like, what is blocking execution? What challenges are we facing? What big decisions we need to make? What team problems or org problems we are having, et cetera, et cetera. It was very much driven by us. And I was like, wow, this is super useful. You can still have those pairwise conversations if you want, but it brings everybody on the same page with regards to the ground truth. Then I started doing the same within my team and org, and I found it super valuable. And I realized one thing: if you're starting to now think about, well, I should run this kind of meeting within my own org, or I should suggest this type of meeting to my manager, the main thing I'll call out is the key to success with these meetings is that the low power people, so say if I'm the leader who's proposing the meeting, then it'll be the people one level below. They have less power. Those folks need to feel like they own the agenda, number one, okay? Number two, they should not feel like they're going to get interrogated here or they're going to get yelled at in this meeting. Number three, they should not feel like they're going to get judged at this meeting. As a leader, you need to create a certain vibe and a certain way of running the meeting and a certain way of speaking and a certain set of criteria of which issues you will actually bring up and which issues you will actually let go of, even if it bugs you, so that you can satisfy these criteria. Because the alternative, if you don't do this, the alternative is that they will now think, the lower power people, the people on your team who you're asking to join for this meeting, they're not going to be honest with you. They're not going to be candid with you. They're not going to tell you the real issues. So don't make this an optics. Remember the 3 levels of product work: the impact level, the execution level, and the optics level. You don't want this meeting to turn into a game of optics. So it is your responsibility to be mature about it. And in some cases, you'll have to hold back. In some cases, you'll have to be quiet, even though something upsets you. So what you want is, you want this meeting to primarily be focused at the execution level, and then secondarily at the impact level. So at Stripe, we started doing this, and we didn't have a dedicated designer for many, many years. So it would be 2-on-2s instead of 3-on-3s. Every Friday morning in any kind of org, we would have like 3-4 different teams, whatever the case might be. Each team had a 30-minute slot, and there was a shared document just with that team. It's not shared with anybody else. So the EM and the PM of the team would be expected to put in agenda items, and they would go through their agenda items, which is like, hey, we have this issue, or like this person is sick, and so that's going to affect this milestone. Or, hey, we have this dependency, and can you please go clear it? Or sales came to us and escalated this issue. What should we do about it? Or like, oh, we are not quite sure how to formulate goals for the next quarter for this focus area. We are not sure if we should work on A or work on B. Those are the types of issues that they would bring up to us. By the way, before this, all of these things are happening in pairwise conversations. And it's a complete shit show, because it's like everybody's leaving out some information and then ornamenting some other information to make themselves look good. Here, everybody's in the same room. So we're forced to get to the ground truth, and we're forced to be very earnest and very sincere with each other. Then my job as a product leader and my Eng counterpart's job as the engineering leader was to help them problem solve, which is like, okay, yeah, this problem, give it to us. We'll tackle it. Or this other problem, this should not even be a problem. Don't talk to that team. Send them to me. Or you have this personnel issue. Here's how I might address it. Oh, you're going to miss this milestone. Help me understand what the trade-offs are, whatever the case might be. It's basically this venue where we can solve these execution issues quickly and transparently. The main thing to remember is your attitude as the senior leader needs to be the right attitude. I sometimes had to educate my Eng counterpart on this, because I was the one initiating the meeting, saying we should do this. So sometimes I had to educate my Eng counterpart, which is like, I know you're upset about this, but let's not bring this up. Because again, if they start seeing this as a forum where they're going to get yelled at or judged, it's going to be very different than what we want it to be. The last thing I'll share is, there are other teams that have done similar things. Famously at YouTube, Shishir Mehrotra, who's now the founder of Coda, they had something called tag ups, which were very similar. So yeah, that's about these 2-on-2s and how to run them.